The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Detective SEO Ion Park stared at the lab report that would haunt her for months. The numbers didn't lie, but they made no sense. Thaddeus Blackwood's DNA was all over the crime scene: saliva on a coffee cup, blood under the victim's fingernails, hair strands on the couch where Jung-Hoon Valdez had been brutally strangled. There was just one problem. Thaddeus had been locked in a maximum security cell at Millbrook Correctional when the murder occurred. The victim, Jung-Hoon Valdez, had been found 3 days ago in his upscale apartment on the north side of the city. The tech entrepreneur's body was discovered by his business partner, Min-Jun Chen, who had grown concerned when Jung-Hoon missed an important investor meeting. The scene was violent, but contained no signs of forced entry, no theft, just the methodical work of someone who knew their victim well. SEO-YEON had seen plenty of murders in her 15 years on the force. But this case gnawed at her differently. The evidence was too clean, too perfect. Murderers made mistakes, left inconsistent trails, created chaos. This felt orchestrated. She walked through the crime scene again, her boots echoing in the empty apartment. The coffee cup sat exactly where it had been found on the granite kitchen counter, lipstick marks still visible on the rim. But Thaddeus Blackwood was serving a 5-year sentence for armed robbery, and the prison logs confirmed he hadn't left his cell block in 18 months. Detective Park, Officer Zircon Martinez, appeared in the doorway, his usually confident demeanor replaced by confusion. "We've got another problem. The lab wants to run the DNA again. They're saying the sample is ... unusual." COIN raised an eyebrow. "Unusual how?" "They won't say over the phone. Dr. Zarkonian wants to see you in person." The forensics lab occupied the basement level of the precinct, a sterile maze of equipment and evidence bags. Dr. Alara Zarkonian had been the chief forensic scientist for over 2 decades, her reputation built on precision and an almost supernatural ability to extract meaning from the smallest traces of evidence. She rarely called detectives down personally. "Detective Park," Dr. Zarkonian gestured to a microscope station. "I need you to see this yourself." COIN peered through the lens, seeing what looked like standard DNA markers to her untrained eye. "What am I looking at?" "Thaddeus Blackwood's DNA, exactly as we expected to find it. But there's something else." Dr. Zarkonian switched slides. "This is from the same sample, run through different markers." The second image looked subtly different, markers appearing in slightly different positions. "I don't understand." "Neither did I, initially, so I ran it again, and again." Dr. Zarkonian's voice carried an edge of excitement mixed with unease. "Detective, what you're looking at is impossible according to everything we know about genetics. This DNA sample contains markers from 2 different people. The implications hit SEOIN like a physical blow." "You're saying someone mixed DNA samples?" "No. I'm saying this appears to be one sample that somehow contains genetic material from 2 distinct individuals. It's as if Thaddeus Blackwood's DNA was ... modified." COIN straightened, her mind racing. In the distance, she could hear phones ringing, officers talking, the normal sounds of a police station. But down here in the lab, surrounded by evidence that defied explanation, she felt like she was standing at the edge of something much larger than a simple murder case. "Dr. Zarkonian, in your professional opinion, is this even possible?" The scientist removed her glasses, cleaning them methodically. 6 months ago, I would have said absolutely not. But there have been advances in genetic engineering, experimental procedures that most people don't know exist. If someone had access to the right technology, the right knowledge. She trailed off, but SEOIN understood. Someone was playing a game with rules she didn't yet comprehend, and Jung-Hoon Valdez had been the opening move. The drive to Millbrook Correctional took 43 minutes through industrial wasteland and failing suburban developments. COIN had called ahead, but getting FaceTime with an inmate required paperwork, approval, And patience, she didn't have. She'd pulled strings, called in favors, and made promises to supervisors who questioned why she was chasing impossible leads instead of focusing on evidence that made sense. Thaddeus Blackwood shuffled into the visiting room, wearing standard orange, his wrists shackled despite being no threat to anyone. At 34, he looked older, worn down by institutional life and whatever circumstances had led him here. His dark hair was cropped short, revealing a scar that ran along his left temple, a reminder of the robbery that had gone wrong 3 years ago. Detective Park. His voice carried a slight accent she couldn't place. The guard said you wanted to ask about a murder. I don't know anything about any murder. Sion studied his face, looking for tells, for the micro-expression that revealed deception. She found none. Junghoon Valdez. Ever heard that name? Thaddeus frowned, genuine confusion clouding his features. No, should I have? He was killed 3 nights ago. Your DNA was found at the scene. The confusion transformed into something sharper, not guilt, but fear. That's impossible. I haven't left this place in 18 months. Check the logs, check the cameras. I was in my cell when he stopped, realization dawning. Wait, you said 3 nights ago. Tuesday evening, between 6 and 9 p.m. Thaddeus leaned forward, his chains rattling against the metal table. Detective, 3 nights ago, I was in the infirmary. Food poisoning, they said. Hit about half the prisoners in my block. He paused, studying her face. But that's not why you're really here, is it? If my alibi was the problem, you would have figured that out already. Sion appreciated his intelligence. Tell me about your time here. Any unusual medical procedures? Blood draws? Dental work? Just the standard stuff. Monthly health checks? Dental cleaning last month? He hesitated. There was something weird about 6 months ago. They said there was a mix-up with the lab work, needed to take blood samples again. Took 3 vials instead of the usual one. Who ordered the retest? Prison doctor. Dr. Sarah Keth. But she's not here anymore. Left about 4 months ago. Some kind of family emergency, they said. Sion made notes, her instincts screaming that this detail mattered. What did you think of Dr. Keth? Thaddeus shrugged. Nice enough, professional. Asked more questions than most doctors here. Seemed interested in my background, my family history. Said it was for a health study. What kind of questions? Medical history, but also personal stuff. Where I grew up, what my parents did for work, whether I had any siblings. His expression darkened. Asked about my brother specifically. You have a brother. Had Zex died in a car accident when we were kids. Twins, actually. Identical. Thaddeus's voice carried old pain. Dr. Keth seemed really interested in that detail. Asked if we'd ever shared medical records, blood transfusions, that kind of thing. The pieces clicked together in Sion's mind with terrifying clarity. Identical twins shared nearly identical DNA. If someone had access to genetic material from both brothers, if they had the technology to manipulate it somehow, ... Thaddeus, I need you to think carefully. Did Dr. Keth ever mention genetic research? Advanced medical procedures? Not directly. But I overheard her on the phone once, talking about some project. Mentioned something about genetic chimeras, and proof of concept. Didn't mean anything to me at the time. Sion's blood ran cold. A genetic chimera was an organism containing cells from 2 different genetic sources. In natural cases, it occurred when twin embryos fused in the womb. But if someone could create artificial chimeras, manipulate DNA samples to contain genetic material from multiple sources. Detective. Thaddeus leaned forward, studying her expression. What's this really about? What did they do to me? She looked at him. This man whose genetic identity had apparently been stolen and weaponized, and realized they were both victims of something much larger than either of them understood. I don't know yet, she admitted. but I'm going to find out. Dr. Sarah Keth's personnel file painted the picture of a dedicated medical professional with an unusual background, Stanford Medical School, followed by a fellowship in genetic research at Johns Hopkins, then 5 years at a private biotech firm before taking the position at Millbrook Correctional. Her resignation had been abrupt, citing a family emergency that her supervisor couldn't verify. SEOIO sat in Lieutenant Minjun Reeves's office, spreading documents across his desk while rain hammered against the windows. The lieutenant was a 20-year veteran with the patience of a saint and the administrative skills to navigate department politics. But even he looked skeptical at the direction her investigation was taking. You're telling me someone stole DNA from a prisoner and used it to frame him for murder? Minjun's tone suggested he was humoring her more than believing her. I'm saying someone created a genetic chimera using material from identical twins, one living and one dead, then planted it at a crime scene to create an impossible puzzle. COIN pulled up Dr. Zarkonian's analysis on her tablet. The forensic evidence supports it, and the motive. That's what I need to figure out. But Dr. Keth is the key. She had access to Thaddeus. She disappeared right before the murder, and her background suggests she had the knowledge to pull this off. Minjun studied the documents. What do we know about her current whereabouts? That's the problem. Sarah Keth doesn't exist. The lieutenant looked up sharply. Come again. I ran her credentials. Stanford has no record of her attending medical school. Johns Hopkins never had a fellow by that name. The biotech company she supposedly worked for went out of business 8 years ago, but their HR records show no employee matching her description. So who was working at our prison for 18 months? COIN pulled up a photograph from the personnel file, a professional headshot of a woman in her early 40s with auburn hair and intelligent green eyes. Someone using a very sophisticated false identity. The question is why she targeted Thaddeus Blackwood specifically. Her phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Zarkonian. Need to see you immediately. Found something in the Jung-Hoon Valdez autopsy. 20 minutes later, COIN was back in the forensics lab, where Dr. Zarkonian had laid out a series of tissue samples and photographs on a steel examination table. The toxicology report came back clean. Dr. Zarkonian began without preamble. But I found something unusual during the detailed examination. She pointed to a series of microscopic images. Jung-Hoon Valdez had recent injection sites, 3 of them, very small, in locations that suggest medical knowledge. Injection sites for what? That's what I wanted to determine. Dr. Zarkonian switched to another set of images. I found traces of a compound I've never seen before. Synthetic, complex, designed to break down rapidly in the bloodstream. COIN leaned closer. Could it have been used to incapacitate him? Possibly. But there's something else. The forensic scientist's expression grew troubled. I found cellular damage consistent with genetic manipulation. Someone injected Jung-Hoon with something designed to alter his DNA at the cellular level. The implications staggered SEO. You're saying someone was experimenting on him. I'm saying someone used him as a test subject. The compound I found appears to be some kind of gene therapy delivery system, designed to introduce foreign genetic material into living cells. COIN's mind raced through the possibilities. If the killer could manipulate DNA in living subjects, plant false genetic evidence, create impossible forensic puzzles. Dr. Zarkonian, is there any way to trace this compound? Figure out where it came from? I'm working on it, but it's like nothing in any database. This is cutting-edge genetic engineering, probably years ahead of anything publicly available. As SEOIN drove back to the station, her phone rang. The number was blocked, but she answered anyway. Detective Park. The voice was female, professional, with a slight accent she couldn't identify. I understand you're investigating the Jung-Hoon Valdez murder. Who is this? Someone who knows what really happened, and someone who knows you're in danger. The line went dead before Seo Young could respond. leaving her alone with the rain and the growing certainty that she was being watched by forces she didn't yet understand. The abandoned warehouse district felt like a graveyard of industrial ambition, empty buildings stretching toward a gray sky that seemed perpetually on the verge of storm. Coyon parked 3 blocks away from the address the anonymous caller had texted her, every instinct screaming that this was either a breakthrough or a trap. She'd brought backup. Afisa Zircon Martinez waited 2 blocks north. Detective Ashwin Vex covered the south approach, and she had a direct line to Lieutenant Minjun Reeves, who thought she was chasing a dead-end lead about Dr. Sarah Keth's background. Sometimes it was easier to ask forgiveness than permission. The warehouse at 1247 Industrial Boulevard had been empty for 3 years, according to city records. But someone had been using it recently. Fresh tire tracks in the gravel, footprints in the dust near the loading dock, and a security system that definitely hadn't come with the original building. Detective Park. The voice came from behind her, calm and professional. Coyon spun around to find a woman in her early 40s, auburn hair pulled back severely, wearing a lab coat over dark clothes. The face matched the photograph from the prison personnel file, but something in the eyes suggested this was someone far more dangerous than a simple medical fraud. Dr. Sarah Keth, I presume, though I'm guessing that's not your real name. The woman smiled, an expression that held no warmth. Dr. Alina Kar, molecular biologist, genetic engineer, and until recently, someone who believed science should serve humanity rather than profit. You killed Jung-Hoon Valdez. I executed a man who was selling genetic weapons to the highest bidder. Dr. Kyriako gestured toward the warehouse. Would you like to see what your victim was really working on? Against every protocol she'd ever learned, Coyon followed the woman into the building. The interior had been converted into a sophisticated laboratory, equipment worth millions of dollars arranged in precise configurations. Computer servers hummed in climate-controlled cases, and biological samples filled an entire wall of refrigeration units. Jung-Hoon Valdez wasn't just a tech entrepreneur, Dr. Kyriako continued, leading Coyon through the maze of equipment. He was developing genetic weapons for military applications, designer pathogens that could target specific ethnic groups, biological agents that could rewrite DNA in living subjects, viruses that could spread through populations and activate weeks later. COO studied the laboratory, recognizing some equipment from her forensics training, but understanding none of the complex setups. And you decided to stop him? I decided to expose him. The murder was necessary improvisation when he discovered my investigation. By framing an innocent man in prison, Dr. Kyriako's expression hardened. Thaddeus Blackwood volunteered for my research when I told him it might help other prisoners receive better medical care. He knew I was collecting genetic samples for analysis. He didn't know I was building a case against Jung-Hoon. So you created false evidence using his DNA. I created proof of concept. Jung-Hoon was developing technology to plant false genetic evidence at crime scenes, to frame political enemies or activists who opposed his clients. I used his own methods against him. Coyon felt sick. You're talking about genetic weapons, like they're abstract concepts. People could die. People are dying. Dr. Kyriako stopped at a computer terminal, pulling up files that made Coyon's blood run cold. Military contracts, shipping manifests, correspondence with foreign governments. Jung-Hoon had already sold prototype weapons to 3 different countries. Do you know what happens when a pathogen designed to target Middle Eastern genetics gets deployed in a refugee camp? The scale of it overwhelmed Coyon. She'd thought she was investigating a bizarre murder case, but she'd stumbled into something much larger: international weapons trafficking, genetic warfare, technology that could reshape the nature of conflict itself. Why didn't you go to the authorities? The FBI? International agencies? Dr. Kyriako laughed bitterly. Jung-Hoon's clients included people in those very agencies. His research was funded through defense contracts and black budgets. The authorities were complicit. So you took justice into your own hands. I took responsibility when no one else would. COIN's radio crackled with static. Then Officer Martinez's voice. Detective, we've got movement around the building. Multiple vehicles. Looks like tactical gear. Dr. Kyriako's expression shifted from calm control to genuine fear. They found us faster than I expected. Who found us? Jung-hoon's partners. The people who want his research to continue. Dr. Kyriako moved quickly to a bank of servers, fingers flying over keyboards. Detective, you have a choice. You can arrest me and let genetic weapons proliferate around the world, or you can help me destroy the research before they recover it. Through the warehouse windows, COIN could see black SUVs surrounding the building, figures in tactical gear taking positions. Her radio was full of voices, now Martinez calling for backup, Lieutenant Reeves demanding her location, dispatch coordinating a response to what was rapidly becoming a siege. How do I know you're telling the truth? Dr. Kyriako pulled up another file, this one showing Jung-hoon's correspondence with a contact identified only as Blackwood Industries. COIN stared at the screen. Blackwood, like Thaddeus. Jung-hoon's interest in your prisoner wasn't coincidental. Thaddeus Blackwood is the sole heir to a biotech fortune. His parents died in that car accident with his twin brother, leaving him controlling interest in a company he doesn't even know he owns. The final pieces fell into place with terrifying clarity. The revelation hit SCOIN like a physical blow. Thaddeus Blackwood, petty criminal, forgotten prisoner, was actually the heir to a biotechnology empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and someone had been using his genetic identity as the key to unlocking weapons that could reshape warfare forever. Blackwood Industries was his parents' company. Dr. Kyriako explained rapidly while downloading files from the servers. Cutting-edge genetic research, military contracts, classified government work. When his parents died, the company went into receivership, but the patents, the research, the corporate assets, all of it legally belongs to Thaddeus. But he's been in and out of prison for years. How could he not know? Because someone made sure he didn't. Look at his arrest time. He was about to get his life together, find stable work, something would happen. Planted evidence, false accusations. Crimes that perfectly matched his psychological profile, but didn't quite make sense. The tactical teams outside were moving closer, their voices carrying through the warehouse walls. COIN could hear Martinez coordinating with backup, but she could also hear other voices. Professional.com, giving orders that didn't sound like standard police procedure. Jung-hoon was working with whoever's been controlling Thaddeus, Dr. Kyriako continued. They kept him locked up while they used his identity to access Blackwood Industries research. The genetic chimera technology I used against Jung-hoon. That was developed by his own family's company. And now you've painted a target on both of us. Dr. Kyriako pulled a hard drive from the server bank, then began systematically destroying equipment. The research here proves Jung-hoon was developing weapons that violate every international treaty on biological warfare. But more importantly, it proves someone's been manipulating Thaddeus Blackwood for years to maintain control of his inheritance. A voice echoed through the warehouse, amplified by speakers. Dr. Kyriako, this is Agent Chen with Homeland Security. We know you're inside. Come out with your hands visible. COIN recognized the voice too smooth, too practiced. That's not Homeland Security. No, those are Jung-hoon's business partners. Dr. Kyriako finished destroying the last server, then handed SCOIN the hard drive. Everything's on here. The weapons research, the evidence of Thaddeus's manipulation, the identity of the people behind this conspiracy. Dr. Kyriako, the voice outside had shifted, becoming more personal. We have Detective Park's backup officers. Come out now, or they die. Through a window, Coin could see Martinez and Detective Vex being held at gunpoint by figures in tactical gear. Her blood ran cold. "There's a service tunnel in the basement," Dr. Kyriako said quietly. "It connects to the storm drain system. You can get out. Get that evidence to someone who can act on it. What about you? I've been dead since the moment I decided Jung-hoon had to be stopped. The question is whether his research dies with me." Seo-yeon looked at the hard drive, then at the woman who had committed murder to expose a conspiracy that reached into the highest levels of government and industry. Everything she'd been trained to believe about justice and law enforcement was crashing against the reality of genetic weapons and corporate manipulation. Dr. Kyriako Jung-hoon Valdez was still a human being. He had family, friends, people who cared about him. So do the thousands of people who would have died from his weapons. Dr. Kyriako moved toward the warehouse entrance. "Detective, in your investigation, you'll find that Jung-hoon's family received a substantial life insurance payout after his death. Anonymous donation. I'm not a monster." The voice outside grew more impatient. 30 seconds. Dr. Go, Dr. Kyriako said. "Find the basement access behind the chemical storage area. Follow the tunnel north for half a mile, then surface in the old subway station. Call Lieutenant Reeves. Tell him to contact FBI Special Agent in Charge, Diana Zexadler in Washington. She's been investigating Jung-hoon's operations for months." Agent Zexadler. Jung-hoon made the mistake of selling weapons to people the FBI was already monitoring. Diana's been building a case, but she needed proof of the genetic manipulation technology. Coin took the hard drive, feeling its weight like a stone in her palm. What about Thaddeus? He's the key to everything. As long as he's alive, and his identity can be verified, he controls Blackwood Industries and all its research. But if something happens to him, ... Dr. Kyriako didn't finish the sentence. 20 seconds. Dr. Kyriako checked her weapon, a small pistol Coin hadn't noticed before. "Detective, when you write your report, remember that sometimes the law isn't the same as justice." She walked toward the entrance before Seo-yeon could respond, leaving the detective alone with evidence that could expose a conspiracy stretching from prison cells to Pentagon contracts, and the terrible knowledge that the woman who had given it to her was about to die for it. The gunfire started as Seo-yeon reached the basement access. 3 months later, Coin sat in a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., watching Thaddeus Blackwood sign documents that would make him one of the wealthiest men in America. The man who had shuffled into a prison visiting room in shackles now wore a tailored suit and the bewildered expression of someone whose entire understanding of reality had been shattered and rebuilt. FBI Special Agent Diana Zexadler had been everything Dr. Kyriako had promised: sharp, thorough, and absolutely furious about the scope of the conspiracy her investigation had uncovered. The hard drive Dr. Kyriako had died protecting contained evidence that reached into defense contractors, pharmaceutical companies, and intelligence agencies across 3 continents. The genetic weapons program was bigger than we initially understood, Agent Zexadler explained to the assembled reporters outside the courthouse. Jung-hoon Valdez was operating a network that sold biological weapons to foreign governments, terrorist organizations, and private military contractors. His death prevented the deployment of pathogens that could have killed thousands. Coin watched from the back of the room, remembering the sound of gunfire in the warehouse. The way Dr. Kyriako had walked toward certain death to protect evidence that would expose the truth. The official report listed her death as occurring during a raid on an illegal weapons laboratory. No mention was made of her role in Jung-hoon's murder. After the press conference, Thaddeus found Seo-yeon in the courthouse lobby. He looked older, weighted down by the knowledge of what had been done to him and what he had unknowingly inherited. "Detective Park," he said quietly, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "For believing an impossible story, for finding the truth." when everyone else would have settled for convenient lies. Seo Yun studied his face, looking for traces of the confused prisoner she'd interviewed months ago. What will you do now? Blackwood Industries is being restructured. All weapons research is being terminated, and we're redirecting the company toward medical applications. Gene therapy for cancer patients, treatments for genetic disorders. He paused. Things that help people instead of killing them. And the people who manipulated you for years. Thaddeus's expression hardened. Agent Zexidler assures me they're facing federal charges. Conspiracy, fraud, murder, violations of biological weapons treaties. Some of them won't see freedom again. They walked together through the courthouse steps, into afternoon sunlight that felt like redemption. Seo Yun thought about Dr. Elena Kiriako, who had chosen to become a killer to prevent mass murder, who had sacrificed her identity and ultimately her life to expose a truth no one wanted to acknowledge. Thaddeus, do you think she was right? Dr. Kiriako, I mean. To do what she did? He was quiet for a long moment. Jung-Hoon Valdez developed weapons that could have wiped out entire ethnic groups. He sold them to people who would have used them. Dr. Kiriako stopped him the only way she could. He looked at Seo Yun. I can't say she was right, but I can't say she was wrong. 6 months later, Seo Yun received a package with no return address. Inside was a news clipping about a charity clinic opening in Southeast Asia, funded by an anonymous donation from Blackwood Industries. The clinic specialized in treating victims of biological weapons. Attached to the clipping was a note in handwriting she didn't recognize. Sometimes justice looks different than we expect. Thank you for seeing the truth. Ekseoyeoin stared at the note for a long time, wondering if Dr. Elena Kiriako had somehow survived that night in the warehouse, or if someone else was carrying on her work. In the end, she decided it didn't matter. The genetic weapons program had been dismantled. Thaddeus Blackwood was using his inheritance to help people rather than kill them. And somewhere in the world, victims of biological warfare were receiving treatment funded by money that had once developed the weapons that harmed them. It wasn't perfect justice. It wasn't clean or simple, or the kind that fit neatly into legal frameworks. But it was justice, nonetheless, complicated, messy, and achieved at a price that would haunt everyone involved for the rest of their lives. So, -UO-YEON filed the note in her personal case files, next to the official report that told only part of the truth, and went back to work solving crimes that made sense in a world where DNA evidence meant what it was supposed to mean. And justice was something you could find in a courtroom rather than a warehouse full of secrets and genetic weapons. But, late at night, when she couldn't sleep, she still wondered about the impossible case that had taught her that sometimes the most important truths were the ones that didn't fit in any official report, and that real justice sometimes required people willing to sacrifice everything to protect a world that would never know their names.